最果てのストーリー抱いてあてもなくさまよい続けた滲んだ New World It's only just begun 今始まりの Life This is where tomorrow brings a new day It's time to learn the pace
Hey guys, I'm AfroGeek PlusUltraNappy and welcome back to a brand new anime review. So today's anime, I'm going to be talking to you guys about one that is probably one of the best anime series I watched as of last year, because I watched this with two of my close friends. I want to say somewhere around September, or yeah, I'm definitely going to say September of 2019, and it was really good. And I got this series through a summer sale that Sentai Filmworks had. I believe it was last summer, and I took a gamble with this series because I have never heard of it before, but it was on sale for like $10 on Blu-ray, and by far that was probably one of Sentai Filmworks' best sales ever. The series I am talking to you guys about is BTOOOM. And BTOOOM is about a guy named Ryota Sakamoto who is unemployed, and he's an isolated young man, and he's one of the world's top players in the video game called BTOOOM. Ryota mysteriously ends up getting nominated to participate in a real live version of the game on an island along with other players who have either played the game or random citizens who were mysteriously chosen to be on the island. So he has to fight for his life while running into his in-game wife, Himiko. Now, before I get into the anime series, I do want to point out that there is a huge trigger warning for the series. And by that, I mean, we're going to be basically talking about, in this series, you're going to hear me talk about sexual assault, murder, just a lot of graphic violence, because this series is, oh boy, it's a trigger warning. And I'm sure I might have mentioned this before on the channel for those of you that are like real squeamish and are like kind of get triggered by those kind of subjects. This series might not be for you, but for those of you who just enjoy anime and want something new to watch and honestly don't mind those sensitive subjects within a series, I would highly recommend watching it, because this is probably by far, like I said, one of the best anime series I watched last year. BTOOOM is more of a summer anime kind of series, so where if you just get like the whole squad, y'all just want to group up and have like a night of watching anime, this is that kind of anime to watch. So the genre BTOOOM falls under is action, survival, psychological, science fiction, but just a little bit of a romance subplot. And it is written by Junya Inoue. I'm so bad with pronouncing names. Like I said, you guys know me by now. I butcher the hell out of names. And it is published by Yen Press, and the original manga series ran from June 19th, 2009 to March 20th of 2018. So this is a fairly kind of old manga series. The anime series, you know, it came out like early 2010s kind of, and the manga series has a total of 26 volumes. The anime series originally ran from October 4th 2012 to December 20th 2012, with a total of 12 episodes and having a rating of R17+, which I'm sure that must be like a rating in Japan. That's what I'm assuming. And it was directed by Kotono Watanabe and Studio Madhouse, and it is licensed through Sentai Filmworks, which is how I came across this series. Like I said, it was on sale during a big summer sale Sentai Filmworks was having, and that happened to be one of like the 10 to 15 or 10 to 20 anime series I bought that summer. The series was that good to where it spawned a sequel / spin-off series called BTOOOM U18, which started running in April 2018 and is still currently running. There's only, I believe, 3 of the actual physical mangas released, but I'm sure you could find a lot of this online. For those of you that like to read manga online, I'm sure you could probably find a lot more than just 3 of the volumes. You can find a lot more chapters of a series. I know there is a light version and then there is also a dark version. And by the way, I should mention that it says spoiler alerts or spoilers in this. So, and it'll probably have this mentioned in the title too. So if you don't want to get spoiled on this anime series, click off, go watch the anime yourself, and then come back and check this review out. Otherwise, if you just don't care and you just want to hear me talk about it with spoilers, then by all means, stay tuned and we'll get into it. This series has such a killer opening to where I ended up downloading the song on Apple Music, and I used to jam to that shit every day when I would ride to the bus to school. or to campus. So the main characters in the series are Ryota Sakamoto, who, like I mentioned, he is an unemployed young man who is one of the top players in Japan in the game called BTOOOM. And he is voiced by Taylor Galindo, hopefully I pronounced it right. And then you get Himiko, who is voiced by Brittany Kabrowski. I hope I pronounced it right. And she happens to be a really excellent, skilled player in the game as well. And she happens to be Ryota's in-game wife. And we'll get more into that as I go on within the anime series. And then you get Kosuke Kira, who is voiced by Chelsea McCurdy. And let me tell you, this little motherfucker is the sickest character I have seen in an anime series. And I talked about my last anime review with that dude who was a pedophile from My First Girlfriend as a Gal. This dude, for a 14-year-old kid, he is the sickest thing, like the sickest character I've ever seen in a manga series. And you'll find out as this review goes on. And then you get Nobutika Oda, who is voiced by Crash Buist. I'm so sorry if I pronounced these names wrong. My bad. And then you got Kowashi Tara, who is voiced by Andrew Love. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the series. So we got the first episode, which is called Start. And this episode is Ryota. It kind of goes into more detail on who Ryota Sakamoto is. He's an unemployed 22-year-old who is an elite Japanese player in the video game BTOOOM, which is an MMO game, which is sold in the series. It's sold 3 million copies worldwide. Imagine Halo and Call of Duty mashed together in one game. That's basically what BTOOOM is. It has the technology, the layout of like the costume designs like Halo, but all of the mechanics, but some of the mechanics of Call of Duty and like the battlegrounds of Call of Duty. Basically, he is ranked, I believe, 10th in the world. And so basically what happens in the first episode is Ryota awakens after getting in some kind of dispute with his mom and about him finding a job, because he's 22. All he does is stays in his room and plays video games all day, and the only time he really would leave his room is to like go get snacks at like a local like gas station or something like that. So he basically wakes up with a parachute harness on a tropical island along with a couple other players, and they have items like bomb like weapons called timer BIMs, and he has like this strange green chip that is located in his hand. It's basically like weapons that he had when he was in the BTOOOM game. And I believe there's more weapons throughout the island. Like they'll send care packages on the island for people. As he wakes up and starts patrolling the island, he kind of like starts to remember this dispute he had with his mom about him looking for a job, like I mentioned like maybe a couple seconds ago or a minute ago. And as he's on the island, he runs into other players or other people who happen to be on the island too. And as he's still looking, before this encounter with the guys, he remembers that his mom, Yuki Sakamoto, had an encounter with 2 men once he left to go to the corner store. And I believe his mom assumed that they were men looking to hire people. So I guess she must have signed her son up for this, thinking, oh, it's a job, he'll make money. Instead of him playing video games all day, he'll be out there applying himself. So at night on the beach, he's pursued by a man named Yoshiaki Imagawa. I'm so bad with names. So we're just gonna say Yoshiaka, who attacks him with cracker BIMs. Failing to reason with him, Ryota is forced to basically evacuate in the bushes and just kind of like try and escape, because basically you are fighting for your life on this thing. That's what you're doing on this island. You're fighting for your life. So realizing that he is forced to play the game BTOOOM for real, when Yoshiaka corners him on a cliff, Ryota then sets up a trap, and he basically drops off the cliff into the water while I believe it was a timer BIM or a timer BIM goes off and ends up killing him, not Ryota, but Yoshiaka, who basically tries to attack Ryota. Ryota gets his chip. That's how kind of he gets his first chip. And it's kind of fucked. Like, just imagine waking up on an island, you're kind of rolling around, and then you don't know really what the hell's going on, but you wake up and you're equipped with items from a video game that you play, and you're like, oh, that's funny. And then you're just like, oh, this shit, these are real. And then you get encountered by a dude along with a couple other people who are familiar with the game and play the game as well. They end up trying to kill you out of nowhere, and you have no recall result of what the hell happened previously that led you to the island or what. So then Ryota later, he dreams about the recent dispute with his mother, and then as he stumbles through the jungle near a river, he happens to encounter a girl who is refreshing herself. Then we lead into episode 2, which is called The Bloody High School Girl. So basically a girl named Himiko tells her best friend Miho that she was invited to play BTOOOM with Ryota, and she's like super hyped about playing the game with Ryota. Like she is like bonkers because she's recognized Ryota to be a really good player in the game. So Himiko discusses with Miho and a couple of her other friends about a strange chain letter that has been making rounds throughout the internet and claims to reward anyone with 100,000 yen in exchange for the following disappearance of a person within the email. And so now we fast forward to present, where she finds herself parachuted on the island and is equipped with limited rations, a pouch full of bombs with a stun gun, and then she later awakens to find herself mid 3 men, them being Masashia Miyamoto, or Miyamoto. Musashi Miyamoto. I think that's how you pronounce his name. So she ends up teaming up with them, and when Masumu catches the others eating food without ferrying out the rations, he starts to erase this dispute and is like, yo, what the hell? This isn't fucking fair, guys. Like, why are you doing this? And then basically he ends up getting killed by Musashi. Musashi. He ends up getting killed by him. Who Musashi is like some kind of like veteran guy. That guy ends up getting killed by Musashi, who slits his throat. And then Himiko and Mitsuo sneak out in the night while Musashi is asleep. But when he ends up catching them in the act as they're like running off, he ends up chasing them and tries to catch up with them, but Mitsuo throws blazing gas Bim and ends up scaring Musashi off. So then we end up getting another flashback of Himiko and her friends as they are invited by an upperclassman named Yoshiaka and 3 other band members. When Himiko shows up late, she discovers her friends were beaten and sexually assaulted by the man and his bandmates. That was not a pretty sight to see. They didn't show them being sexually assaulted, but when she gets there, her friends are like literally like beating the fuck up. Luckily for Himiko, she showed up late and she manages to escape and alert the authorities after walking in and seeing what they have done. But because of the trauma that her friends received from being beaten and sexually assaulted, they had to relocate. So now we skip back into the present with Mitsuo, where he becomes delusional, but Himiko stuns him and runs away. Don't know why he ends up becoming delusional. He ends up finding her later on, and he ends up sexually assaulting her. Why there's so much sexual assaulting in the series, I don't know, but then again, we got series like Goblin Slayer. Mitsuo runs away when Himiko activates one of her timer BMs, basically as like a last resort in order to protect herself as she's being sexually assaulted. And so she ends up throwing it at him, killing him. So Himiko then dims that everyone on the island is her enemy, especially the men. And then at that point, Himiko is refreshing herself at the river when she is discovered by Ryota. So basically, in that first episode where I talked about at the end, where he stumbles upon that river and he sees the girl refreshing herself, that happens to be Himiko. So now we move on to episode 3, which is called Survival. And basically Ryota attempts to cure Himiko about her case full of food, but she ends up running away in the bushes, and Ryota tries to relocate her. He instead stumbles upon a man named Kayoshi, who is defecated in the bushes. Who's defecating in the bushes, which I'm pretty sure that means he's, taking a shit in the bushes, basically. Kayoshi explains that he was also approached by 2 men, after which he woke up mysteriously on a cargo plane with a small crowd of people who were all informed by a cheerful man on the screen that they're participating in a death game on a tropical island. After they all learn the objective of completing the game is to collect the IC chips that are placed within their hands. You have to receive 8 of those IC chips in order to leave the island and win the game. And a lot of people start to have like an outrage on the plane, and then there's masked men who end up stunning them in front of Kyoshi. Kyoshi remembers Ryota as the outspoken one on the plane. Kyoshi started to seem to kind of get this idea that Ryota knew the man who was in charge, which I believe was the man who created the game BTOOOM. He was shocked with a head and a stun gun, which kind of explains his memory loss. So basically Ryota realizes that the plane reaches the island, the participants are thrown out with parachutes, and Ryota realizes that Kyo's Japan is the one who created the game BTOOOM. He's most likely, like I said, responsible for everybody being on the parachute and going on into the game. And I believe his motive was to release all the footage that they captured of people killing each other and stuff, and he was going to release it as like some sort of TV series. So as Ryota and Kyoshi decide to team up to improve their odds, they notice another plane dropping food supplies, and when Ryota races after the food supplies, a woman named Masako reaches it first, only for her to be killed by a trap set by a man, who takes it and leaves. And then Ryota and Kyoshi then contemplate on whether they should pursue. So upon reaching the parachute, they discover a small boy covered in blood who appears to have killed another man for the food supplies. So now we reach episode 4, which is called Best in the World. And in the past, a 14-year-old sadistic necrophilic boy named Kaisuke Kira, who was arrested for murdering 3 women. He has a lot of psychological issues, and he's a necrophilic, which I'm not going to get into detail. You can look that up for yourself. But so back in the present, a lawyer named Soichi discovers Kosuke, I think it is, near the shore, skewing frogs for fun. Yeah, that should tell you that this kid is a little fucked up in the head, or very fucked up in the head. Shit. Yeah, Soichi tries to explain that it is wrong to kill living things out of amusement. Food supply drops nearby. The two investigated the boy's abusive father, Yoshihisa Kira. After forcing his son to use an implosion beam to retrieve the food, he decides to take the case for himself, going on about survival for the fittest, which is really fucked up that you want to do that to your son. You know, you don't want to share with your son. You're like, oh
yeah, fuck you, little nigga. This is my shit.
So basically, after being tired of his father's abuse, he activates an implosion beam on his dad, killing him. Feeling a rush of euphoria, Soichi runs away from him, frightened, saying that Kyoshi is akin to a monster. And at this point, Kyoshi discovers Ryota and Kyoshi, who retreat after falling to reason with him. Ryota decides to fight in order to protect Kyoshi. So Ryota and Kosuke,
oh, brother, this guy stinks!
soon recognize each other as BTOOOM players and engage in an all-out battle. Kosuke taunts and attacks him. Ryota hits his head against a rock, which causes a personality shift where he perceives reality as being the game world. And then Ryota defeats him by hiding his movements with advanced sonar canceling. And after Ryota cannot bring himself to kill the boy, Ryota binds him to a tree, taking the food supplies and his bims. When Ryota leaves, the boy is thrilled to learn that Ryota is actually the top ranked player in the game BTOOOM. So now we move on to episode 5, called Attack. So Ryota returns with the food supplies case to Kyoshi. In a flashback, Ryota remembers stepfather catching his mother trying to commit suicide. And while Ryota and Kyoshi are eating near a river, the corpse of Misuyo without pants washes down the stream, leaving Ryota and Kyoshi to speculate. Ryota suspects that there is an enemy lurking near up the stream, so he goes to investigate and discovers Himiko waiting atop a cliff. She draws him out into an open by throwing a blazing gas beam into the forest. Throughout, he attempts to reason with her, but she still attacks him with cracker beams, promoting him to charge at her. She tries to use her stun gun on him to defend herself, but he ends up causing her to use it on herself. So I guess he kind of like deflects it, and then he ends up she ends up using it on herself and she ends up landing on top of him, which is weird. This is a weird part. He is tempted to grope her while she is unconscious, but he pieces together that she was previously assaulted by the guy that they saw straw floating downstream with no pants. And then Himiko awakens in Ryota'S arms, and upon the fear of being violated again, she activates a timer BIM hidden in her pocket, but Ryota deactivated it. Back at the campsite, she explains to Ryota and Kyoshi that everyone on the island has been picked by someone they knew to disappear. Himiko realizes that her friends chose to nominate her because they felt as if Himiko betrayed them in that incident with the band members when they were beaten and sexually assaulted. And Kyoshi thinks that a real estate customer might have chosen him due to an argument. And Ryota realizes that his own mother has chosen him to define her. And suddenly the group is attacked by a pack of Komodo dragons. So now we move on to episode 6, which is called Nida's Sacrifice. So after Himiko passes out, Kyoshi carries her to the other side of the river, leaving Ryota to handle the Komodo dragons. Ryota realizes that the BIMs are rendered useless until their owner is dead. So after the Komodo dragon bites Kyoshi's leg, Ryota manages to activate one of his cracker BIMs to scare it off. So while Ryota carries Himiko on his back, Kyoshi carries all the food supplies, the BIMs, and basically everything else. And he starts to really kind of get in that mindset on why he's there and why he's being punished, and basically why he was placed on the island for being a monster at his job. But the Komodo dragon appears and causes the two to get separated. Ryota, failing to locate Kyoshi using his sonar and assuming that he's being abandoned, is nearly attacked by a Komodo dragon. And Kyoshi returns and kills it using a homing BIM, confirming that his sonars cancel out when they were searching for each other. Turns out they were followed by more Komodo dragons to an abandoned communications tower near the area. Kyoshi tries to hold off the Komodo dragons using a homing BIM, but it doesn't really do much. This prompts Ryota to use one of Himiko's blazing gas BIMs by using her finger to activate the switch to drive the Komodo dragons away. And after Himiko later regains consciousness, she still shows trauma after Ryota just touches her on the shoulder. But I mean, can you blame her? Seriously, can you? After Kyoshi's leg becomes infected, Ryota has Himiko hold Kyoshi's down to disinfect it. In the mainland, it is revealed that the guy who created the game is monitoring the events on the island, especially with his special intentions on having more interest on Ryota. And as Ryota notices the variety of food supplies and BIMs that Himiko possesses, he concluded that she had murdered many other applicants, putting her under suspicious. And as they are suddenly discovered by another participant's sonar, Ryota decides to draw the assailant away from his friends. In the forest, Ryota is attacked by another assailant revealed to be Musashi. So now we are on episode 7 called Virtual Bride. So in the past, Ryota and Himiko got married in the game BTOOOM, like I mentioned earlier in the game, but Himiko did not want to meet him in the real world just yet. And Ryota realizes that Musashi and Soshi are working together, is overpowered, and has his BIMs. Although Musashi allows Ryota to escape after shocking Soichi with a stun gun, this was his plan to track Ryota back to the abandoned communications tower. Ryota tries to reason with Musashi, saying that the entire scenario was set up by the game Tyrone's Japan to iron out bugs in BTOOOM, as there may be, loopholes allowing everyone to survive. Ryota returns back unharmed and finds Himiko's phone, realizing that she may be the same Himiko who he knew in the game, judging by her cosplay wallpaper. At another abandoned building, Musashi and Soichi tie Himiko down to a bed, proceeding to torture her. Ryota, leaving Kyoshi behind, uses a sonar to signal and locate Himiko, prompting Musashi and Soichi to search for him. After untying her, Ryota questions if she was the Himiko that he once played with in BTOOOM, but she denies it. The two are attacked by Soichi, who ends up being killed. So the two end up being attacked after she denies not knowing him from the game by Soichi, who ends up being killed by his own cracker BIM that Ryota previously disabled. Musashi then holds Himiko hostage, challenging Ryota to a fistfight. Instead, he rushes for Musashi's knife, only to be beaten to the ground. So then Himiko then jumps on Musashi and activates a blazing BIM on him, sending a plum of gas after them. Ryota and Himiko try to escape, going through an opening in a cell, but not long before our severely burnt Musashi grabs Himiko's leg to drag her back down, Ryota activates Soichi's timer BIM, which soon activates and kills Musashi. In an unknown location, a larger number of the Tyranno's Japanese executives view Ryota'S victory over Musashi. So now we get on to episode 8, called By Ghost. So in the flashbacks, Himiko was cast out by her former friends, so she retreated to the game world and met Ryota, who sensed her discomfort but chose not to inquire her about it. In the mainland, Tyranno's Japan discusses the game's progress, noting that the psychological warfare between the participants. Ryota and Himiko take refuge in yet another abandoned building at night. Ryota explains that he views the game world more as reality, especially with his relationship with Himiko, hence his reasoning for saving her from Musashi. Himiko silently breaks into tears, not expecting to meet Ryota in the real world and afraid of her revealing her true identity to him as the Himiko in the game world due to her previous traumatic experiences. Himiko wakes up in the middle of the night and screams upon the sight of a ghost. Ryota investigates and discovers a seemingly crazed woman living nearby, knocking her out when she tries to attack him. Ryota brings Himiko with him to calm down the woman, recognizing as Shiki Murasaki, who was a survivor from the previous iteration of BTOOOM, and she also herself lost her trust in men too. Shikai was a nurse at an understaffed hospital working with a doctor named Masato Date, I think that's it. As they both chosen to participate in the death game, Masato blasts her left arm off, obtaining 6 IC chips, and takes her IC chip in betrayal and ends up leaving her on the island via helicopter. Himiko, knowing full well that her loyalty with Ryota will be tested, returns to Ryota, who plans to get 8 IC chips as a way to hijack a helicopter to free both of them, as well as Kyoshi and Shiki. As Ryota and Himiko say goodbye to Shiki, it is revealed that Masato was sent back to the island to treat Kyoshi's wounds. So now we move on to episode 9, The Strongest Player. So Ryota and Himiko return to Kyoshi, who has had his wounds treated by the doctor, who tricks them all into gaining their trust, to secretly intending to betray them and take their IC chips later on in the game, or later on in the island. A new food supply case arrives on the island, urging Ryota, Himiko, and the doctor to rush for it. Ryota engages in a fight with a man wearing sunglasses named Nobutuka, and the doctor ends up catching the food case and brings it towards Ryota, who runs from the dude with the sunglasses. However, after a fire occurs, Nobutuka grabs onto the food supply case and dives off a cliff into the ocean, as to which Ryota follows him. Meanwhile, Himiko is attacked by a young female named Hidemi, who constantly taunts her. While they are fighting, the doctor throws a remote control BIM their way, intending to kill both of them. However, after he does that, he notices Himiko is still alive, and then he pretends to try and save her. Himiko quietly deducts that the doctor is lying through his teeth and starts to realize, puts 2 and 2 together, that he's in this for himself and he wants to kill Kyoshi, Ryota, and herself and get their chips, their IC chips. And then she also starts to realize that Ryota is the only person on the island that she can trust. So Ryota resurfaces near the beach and witnesses a man named Tomoyoka fall for Nobutuka's booby trap. Ryota comes out of hiding and threatens him with a cracker BIM, telling him to drop all his equipment. The guy obeys, which causes Ryota to get suspicious. As Ryota approaches the equipment, the guy activates a hidden remote control BIM and seemingly kills Ryota. But when Nobutuka activates his sonar, he is surprised to see Ryota is still very much well alive. So now we move on to episode 10, which is called High Level. Tyranno's Japan reviews the fight between Ryota and Nobutuka, seeing that Ryota is able to anticipate the guy's strategy, in which he chooses to back away and leave behind his equipment. The other guy then leaves after realizing who he was fighting, leaving Ryota to wonder how Nobutuka knows his name. When Ryota, Himiko, and the doctor return to Kyoshi, it dawns on Ryota to remember that Nobutuka was his best friend back in high school, up until Nobutuka slept with Ryota's crush. After the doctor mentions that more food supplies will arrive at noon the next day, he suggests that a serum is needed to heal Kyoshi's wounds. Ryota and Himiko bring the doctor to Shiki's house to retrieve the medicine. As the 3 split up, the doctor finds some expired medicine and puts them in a case, which he entrusts to Ryota, who gets this strange feeling about this. When Ryota signals Himiko, she comes running back and shouts at him to drop the case. This is because the doctor secretly placed a remote control BIM inside the case, which soon activates. Now we're on episode 11, Revival. Ryota seems to have been killed, or seemingly killed. Himiko loses the will to fight, but Shiki saves her and wounds the doctor with a sickle. 10 minutes earlier, Himiko met with Shiki, who told her about how the doctor planted a remote control BIM inside his case before handing it to Ryota. In the present, Himiko and Shiki are reluctant to know that the doctor planted traps in the surrounding area, and that he managed to get rid of that case before it exploded 5 minutes earlier. But he fails, and it is revealed that Ryota has survived, and he managed to get rid of the case before it exploded 5 minutes early. The doctor runs from Ryota to lure him into another trap and deactivates another remote control BIM, not knowing that Ryota has moved the remote control BIMs to another location, which explodes and injures the doctor. Ryota and Himiko hesitate to finish him off until Shiki appears, eager to kill him. At the last moment, she alters the path of a blade next to him, saying she will never forgive him. While Himiko takes an outdoor shower, Ryota wonders to her why Shiki spared the doctor. Afterwards, Ryota and Himiko assert that the corpse of Yoshihisa, Masuyo, and Yoshihisa have their IC chips removed. As the two head back to their place, Ryota realizes that Kayoshi would be the only one who knew about the 3 corpses. When Ryota begins climbing the ladder, he hears a homing BIM approaching and figures out that Kayoshi has turned against them. So now we move on to the last and final episode, called Bonds, which is episode 12. And Kayoshi, having hallucinations of his son and his wife both waiting for his return, he targets Ryota from the forest with his homing BIMs. Ryota dodges the homing BIM only to be targeted by another, injuring his leg while he blames himself for Kayoshi's ordeal. And I believe this is because I think Kayoshi starts to hallucinate from the venom of the Komodo dragons, and then he starts to feel as if Himiko and Ryota betrayed him because they left him alone. Supported by Himiko, they are able to avoid more homing BIMs, in which Kayoshi panics and flees. When Ryota and Himiko go after him, Ryota tries to apologize for his actions. Kayoshi, feeling sorry for betraying them, commits suicide with his last homing BM when he becomes surrounded by Komodo dragons as a way to atone for his sins. As Ryota mourns for him, Himiko takes all the IC chips off of Kayoshi and they return to their hideout. There, Himiko asks Ryota to kill her so that he can leave the island, but he refuses. Ryota then finally recognizes Himiko as the person he knew in BTOOOM, as the player that he married and that deep down he secretly loved, and that Himiko secretly loved Ryota. After they both realize that they are each other from the BTOOOM game, they both start to have an intimate exchange. Ryota stops when he senses her fear, but after confronting Nobutika in his mind, he promises to date her for real when they return home. Elsewhere, back on the main island, several employees from Tyrannos Japan leave for the island when it is said that there is a mechanical problem on the island, and one of the employees named Sunika silently apologizes to Ryota, saying that it was the best he can do and perhaps a sign that he did something to help Ryota. Basically, they both manage to stay on the island together until they both end up getting enough chips. And then you kind of see montages of other players who were left on the island. Basically like this big old cliffhanger. You want to know what happens, but as far as I'm concerned, this is all of the anime they have done. Believe it or not, there are 2 versions of this. Like I mentioned, there's a light version and there is a dark version. In the light version, I believe what happens is it has a happy ending. They both end up getting off the island and return home. But in the dark version of the manga, Ryota gives Himiko the IC chips and tells her to return home while he stays on the island. He starts to realize that he is a puppet in Tyrannos Japan's game. For their amusement, he decides to stay on the island and try and kill off the rest of the participants in order to amuse him. Very dark, I know. Those are basically the two endings. But overall, guys, that was the anime review over BTOOOM. Now, like I said, this was probably one of my favorite series, and I know I didn't do much justice by constantly looking back and forth, reading off of a script, and telling you guys personally from what I thought. But as I was telling you guys each episode, I started reminiscing and remembering all the clips and all the scenes, and just remember how shit was so dark within that series, and kind of like, it's not scary, but it's like a thriller. Like, it leaves you leaving off the edge of your seat, you know. And me and my buddies finished this within 2 nights. I highly would recommend you guys go check it out. If you are okay with triggering topics like this that I mentioned within this anime review, then by all means check it out for yourself. You won't regret it. This is by far one of the best anime series I have seen. But alrighty guys, that is going to be it for the review. If you enjoyed, leave a like on the video, subscribe if you are new in the channel, hit the bell to get notified whenever I upload videos, or you can hit the personalized option to get notified when I upload every other video. Don't forget to hit up all my social medias in the description below. I'm talking Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and Patreon. And if you would like to do more to help support the channel, you can donate to the Patreon. That way that goes towards getting money for me to get better editing equipment, get a better camera, lights, maybe even hire an editor to make these videos more pop. But just by you clicking on the video and watching it means the world to me as is. But alrighty guys, I'll see you guys in the next anime review or in the next video. I am AfroGeek +UltraNappy, and your boy is just